The Bears and Commanders load up for their second-year quarterbacks. The Jets and Raiders get their new starting quarterbacks. We look at the biggest offensive winners so far in NFL free agency on today's edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for SportingNews.com. My co-host, Michelle Majuk, is off today, so I'm flying solo on today's show. The topic will be the 6 most improved offenses so far, the biggest winners in NFL free agency. So we'll count those down from 6 to 1. The Commanders and Bears are going to be on this list, as well as the Jets and Raiders, all related to their quarterback. So looking forward to breaking down that list for you on today's show. We're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and the Giants Steelers to see how all that plays out. Once that happens, we'll have a big show related to Rodgers. So still waiting there, but there's plenty of things to talk about that are non-Rodgers related so far in fantasy. So let's get right to it. The number 6 most improved offense for fantasy football that we like, the Los Angeles Rams. Now, we thought Matthew Stafford might be done. We thought he would be traded or released or retire, but instead he's back as their starting quarterback. And Cooper Kupp, okay, we were fretting over them moving on from Cooper Kupp, whether they're going to trade or release him. Looks like the latter is going to transpire, but they go out and get Devontae Adams. So the Rams are not done here with their offensive run with Sean McVay. They add Adams with Puka Nacua. They had a fight over number 17. It ends up being that Adams keeps 17. Puka Nacua goes to a different number here. So they love Adams coming in and working the outside for this team. And I think he has a little bit more upside than Kupp. They're about the same age, but Adams coming off a pretty good finish to the year with the Jets, his third NFL team. He's on his 4th team now, Packers, Raiders, Jets. He's looked good throughout all the stops. He hasn't really slowed down. He's a very technically sound receiver with great hands, and he can finish really well in the red zone. So we've talked about this. It's a big bump for Matthew Stafford having these two guys, Nacua and Adams. I think they're not done. I think they're going to look at a tight end, possibly an upgrade there in the draft to really streamline his weapons a little bit more. They went to work already on the defense, right? They rebuilt it really well with some additions and draft picks. Now they're slowly hacking away and getting that offense back up to where Sean McVay wants it with slightly different personnel. So I like that the Rams kept status quo at quarterback with Stafford. They got the deal done. They got Jimmy Garoppolo behind them, so the insurance is there for Stafford, who's 37. And then they go out and get Adams, a co-number 1, essentially, with Puka Nacua. So I like it. I think definitely Adams is an upgrade from what we saw last year of him and Kupp from what they had with Kupp. So that's really good news here for this offense that's on an uptick and always reliable with Sean McVay. Number 5 most improved offense that's coming in, the New York Jets. Now, they haven't really done all that much other than add Justin Fields, and they signed him to a pretty hefty contract here, 2 years, $40 million. He gets $30 million of that guaranteed. Aaron Rodgers, we know, is looking for a new home. He's been now officially released by the Jets in the new league year. So this is a big pivot, right? They're going to a 26-year-old quarterback. They had a 41-year-old quarterback at the end of last season. So now going 15 years younger, also going to a pure running quarterback. I mean, Rodgers was a good athlete, but he slowed down a little bit with the Achilles tear. Now you get Justin Fields, who's going to reshape the face of this Jets offense going forward. So that alone makes it more interesting. We talked about the effects on Breece Hall. Having a running quarterback and a good rushing attack is always hand in hand. We talked about Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. Wilson is now the go-to guy without Adams, so related to that move where the Jets move on from Adams, you have now Garrett Wilson can dominate targets. By the way, these two guys played together at Ohio State, so there's a built-in chemistry in this offense. And I also like the new offensive direction. They got Tanner Engstrand to call the plays. He was with Ben Johnson in Detroit. We know how successful they were there. That's good news for Breece Hall, maybe getting a little bit of the Jahmyr Gibbs treatment, and Garrett Wilson getting some of that go-to guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown domination here. So this is a pretty good trio of fantasy producers working together. The offensive scheme is a nice improvement. We'll see what they do in the offensive line, see if they can upgrade a few things there. Tyron Smith is a free agent. But again, this is a pretty good group when you look at individually. a lot of appeal for all these three guys. Now, I think Breece Hall bumps up a little bit. Might have been a back end RB1 or RB2, but I think this definitely helps him in the running quarterback. You have Garrett Wilson. He was already up there in the top 12 in scoring with Aaron Rodgers. Now I think he has better built-in chemistry with Fields, who supported DJ Moore really well in Chicago just a couple of seasons ago. So this is great news for the Jets and in terms of what they're going to do. And Fields automatically has a high floor in fantasy. Michelle and I already talked about it here on the show, where, again, his cheat code is so big because he's so into running. He can dominate on the ground. I think the Jets are going to unleash that a little bit from him. So I'm really excited to see what Fields can do in this new offense. Again, a lot of that mindset that was there with Aaron Rodgers gone with Aaron Glenn. I think some of that Jets dysfunction will be out the door as well between Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh and Rodgers. You don't have that drama. So the positive vibes are starting to happen with the Jets, and Fields is the feel-good story with that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else they do for this offense. But again, Rams and Jets turning the corner and having different looks to their offense, but definitely improvements, and we want to pay attention to them in fantasy football. Now, there's four more teams that did really well offensively. We know the Patriots did some great defensive moves, but they're not on the list. These are all the teams that improved the most offensively so far in free agency. We'll get to that. We got four more. We'll count down all the way to number one. You might guess who it is, but I'll give you a hint. They do have a second-year QB. We'll do that right after this break. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but just as important as taking care of your body, traditional in-person therapy can cost a fortune, anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with Betterhelp, you can save up to 50% per session. Betterhelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable to you. With more than 30,000 therapists and more than 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. And the best thing about BetterHelp, you can get matched with the licensed therapist that you are going to connect with, and you can change therapists at any time for free. And really, you just want to think about where you can invest, and BetterHelp's going to help you do that, where you're going to spend some on yourself, but really feel good about it in the end. It really fits well into our busy lives there. And then, look, I visit a therapist pretty regularly, and they've changed my life. They give me a roadmap for what I'm looking for when I'm lost in life, and they can do that for you too at BetterHelp. Your well-being is well worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockdown today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/locked on. All right, now let's continue the show here and look at more fun with the NFL free agency winners for fantasy football, the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that, right? Because Sam Darnold is gone, but I think they're prepared for the J.J. McCarthy era. Sneaky, immediate move, bringing back Aaron Jones in the backfield. He had a very good year. I think he'll fare better in this offense because they got two run blockers straight from the Indianapolis Colts. They upgrade guard with Will Freeze, and they also got their center from the Colts, Ryan Kelly. So these were two of the weaker spots on the offensive line. We hope that Christian Darrisaw comes back healthy and anchors left tackle. Keep in mind, he missed a lot of last season. So now you're in business with this blocking group. If Darrisaw comes back healthy, you have these two interior linemen that are there. That's really good news for Aaron Jones because so far they haven't brought back Cam Akers. They might look for a younger back there, but it also says that Jones might be the right fit for what they're trying to do, the passing game, and really can do the little things, pass protection, and really stay on the field there for 3 downs for the Vikings. So I really like that. And again, J.J. McCarthy, I think this mentality could be a little bit different. They could lean on the run a little bit more to take pressure off him, but we've seen it with Kirk Cousins. We've seen it with Sam Darnold. This system with Kevin O'Connell's really superior to the point where you can plug in a lot of guys, and now you have better protection and better run blocking for this group. So already an explosive offense. We don't have to worry about TJ Hawkinson coming back from a major injury. He should be healthy. You have those two wideouts that are fantastic, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, locked in here with their key roles. The key will be finding a little bit of chemistry from McCarthy, who did miss a lot of the practice time once he went down with a knee injury in preseason and the training camp last year. But McCarthy in himself is a sleeper to watch here. I mean, the weapons are just too good. And I'll just say this, I'll draft J.J. McCarthy in the Vikings offense well ahead of Sam Darnold and the Seahawks offense. There's no doubt about it because, look, McCarthy can run a little bit. You can throw to these weapons. This is a good offensive line. Everything is lining up really well here for J.J. McCarthy. We already know what Justin Jefferson can do right up there with the top receivers in fantasy. Jordan Addison bumping up into wide receiver 2 status. And I think a good rebound season is ahead for T.J. Hawkinson. And again, Jones can anytime kind of boost himself back up to where he was with the Packers, that touchdown machine he had that one season. It's always going to be there. So then they could get a few more rushing touchdowns out of this, having that interior blocking a little bit better this season. So arrows pointing up for everything in the Vikings offense, even though they didn't keep Sam Darnold. I think they felt confident in McCarthy and the support system that they had going forward with the improvements that they're going to be just fine and a very high-scoring offense and pleasing to fantasy to boot. Then come the Raiders at number 3. Yeah, they chicken at 3. The Raiders in most off seasons would be number 1 on this list, but there's 2 teams that outdid them. The Raiders went out and got Geno Smith. Why is this important? You think, okay, it's Geno Smith. The Seahawks didn't really want him. Hey, they moved him in a trade. So why should the Raiders be excited? Well, there's multiple reasons. You get a stable veteran presence. Geno Smith is known to execute the offense right in front of him, and he's run Chip Kelly's offense plenty. I know he comes from a different offense now. He was with Ryan Grubb last year. Dave Canales helped to kind of turn around his career as a longtime backup, evolve and emerge from being number 2 to Russell Wilson. But he's going back to an offense he knows very well from West Virginia. The spread concepts are all there. Chip Kelly can be confident that he can execute those. He has enough athleticism to do that, so they'll encourage some of the running at times, and Geno has padded his numbers with running. And they're going to go out and get a receiver, I'm pretty sure. When you look at Brock Bowers, I mean, he's locked in as the number 1 target right now, tight end. Jacoby Myers is a pretty good number 2. I think there are still moves to come with the backfield and receiver in the draft if they don't add some more depth in free agency. So the Raiders are going to point upward. I think you'll see some more run heaviness out of them, but the Chip Kelly wrinkle is there to kind of make sure Pete Carroll opens up the offense a little bit in the passing game. We've seen some big seasons for Chip Kelly quarterbacks in the NFL, namely Nick Foles. So we know the numbers can be there, especially with Bowers and Myers being a good baseline of weapons here, even with Adams, 2 teams removed from the Raiders. But I'm really excited, again, to see what happens here. Tom Brady is kind of lurking in the background, his influence as a minority owner on this team. Carroll, Kelly, a lot of experience in winning. Carroll has that Super Bowl ring. Kelly is coming off a national championship working with Will Howard. So that's good news that he is back in tutelage mode here with his quarterback. And now he's got a seasoned person here in Geno Smith, who's 34. And look, we just had so much mess between Jimmy Garoppolo, Nathan O'Connell, and Gardner Minshew, and some of these guys that were misfits in the offenses they were playing for. Josh Daniels was all over the place with his play calling. Luke Getsy wasn't all that great. Now you get Kelly, who's always put together an offensive whiz here. Going to have up-tempo, really help this passing game. I think you'll spread it out and also help the running game. A lot to like about the Raiders here. So they come in at the number 3 most improved offense, and I'm excited. Again, Bowers ended up in a great spot here with Geno Smith. Another person I would draft over Sam Darnold, the Seahawks. I didn't really think the Seahawks improved themselves much. I mean, you can't put them on this list when they get rid of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and basically make a lateral or sub-lateral move going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold quarterback. But definitely the Raiders got the better of that deal in terms of needing that seasoned quarterback who can fit the system, and we know that Geno Smith is right along those lines. So we started with the Rams at number 6, Jets 5, Vikings 4, and the Raiders coming at 3. Again, that leaves the 2 teams with second-year quarterbacks drafted highly in the last segment, the Bears and Commanders. Let's find out who's number 1, but first, let's take another quick break. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. I'll have some March Madness content there at sportingnews.com. So before you fill out your bracket, check that out and get in on the action on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Again, you want to look at your favorites, see where you want to go, which underdogs you want to go to. It makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is also simple and easy to use, so when you're watching out somewhere, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, FanDuel.com, your home for betting on March Madness. All right, it is time to continue to close the show. Let's do a mental drum roll, and we have the last two most improved offenses, and part of it is also the scheming. So the Bears come in at number 2. I said when they got Ben Johnson, a big thing that the Bears would need to do is overhaul their offensive line. They were the most aggressive. They came out swinging. They got Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, 2 very good guards immediately. Upgraded the interior. They have some other guys they look at on the edges here, but you look at Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. Well, now they're really strong in the middle because they also added Drew Dahlman, the center from the Falcons. This guy is fantastic. The run blocking is going to be a lot better already for DeAndre Swift. You'd expect them to add a power back at some point, maybe not in free agency, but in the draft, they can look at that combination, try to recreate the 1-2 punch with Ben Johnson. They have Declan Doyle, who comes from Denver and what they were doing with Joe Lombardi and Sean Payton. So a lot of good offensive mind works. That's good for Swift when you add these guys into the mix. And again, we'll see what they do with their power backs, see if they replace Roschon Johnson and all those guys. But I think Swift is going to be a bigger part of what they want to do here. Again, there's some crossover. I mean, you kind of had Jahmyr Gibbs replace Swift. Swift is better off used as a receiver. So you would think there's some parallels there. Get that backfield committee where Swift can be effective, that power back can be effective. And now when you make this interior line one of the best in the NFL, really, when you make these 3 moves, you're in business here. They're also really good at pass protecting. Joe Thuney had to slide out. It didn't quite work out, but he did play offensive tackle last year for the Chiefs. So we know he's capable of lining up out there and protecting well as Jonah Jackson, pretty good there. And Drew Dahlman, good to have a good line caller experience there for Caleb Williams. So I'm excited about this offense. Again, it helps the running game as well as the pass protection. You have to look at that. Now we'll see what they do at wide receiver. They've been waiting on Keenan Allen. I don't know if he'll be back, but again, they already have some core weapons. We've talked about this between DJ Moore and Roma Dinze, their first-round pick from last year, with whom Williams has good chemistry, and Cole Kmet, who figures to play the Sam Laporta role and see a bigger role again when they go back to this offense with Johnson and Declan Doyle. So I'm really excited about the Bears. I mean, the scheme is there now. The personnel is being worked on. They're not done. I think Ryan Poles, the GM, has a very good grasp of what they want to do in the Ben Johnson era. Ben Johnson looks as sharp as ever when he's been talked to at the combine, and his insights are pretty outstanding. I have very much confidence the Bears know what they're doing offensively as a team overall, and I think you'll see a much improved product there. Less sacks of Caleb Williams, more production, more big plays, making him one of our favorite hot sleepers here at any position in fantasy football for 2025. All right, we're down to the number 1 most improved team, and I don't know how much more this team could improve, but it is the Washington Commanders. I mean, what a season they had last year with Cliff Kingsbury. They were able to retain Kingsbury, was not taken in this hiring cycle. Jayden Daniels is your offensive rookie of the year, however you look at it, Sporting News, other outlets. And now what do you do to him? You get him a left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. And we thought the Deebo Samuel move was exciting, and this was going to be a big deal for the Commanders going forward, and it is. We have now Tunsil on the pass protection side of things. This team wants to throw the ball downfield. Now, they did say goodbye to Diami Brown, so they're going to try to maybe find that second deep threat that they're looking for. Noah Brown is a free agent here. They do have quite a few vacated targets, so that's why they had to keep Zach Ertz at tight end. You can see a little bit more 12 personnel here with Ben Sinnott. Look at Luke McCaffrey being on the field here with Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. So all kinds of possibilities are here in the Commanders' offense. I mean, you have, again, those 2 special receivers now. You didn't have that number 2 that you could count on. It was more by committee. But now Terry McLaurin's the number 1, the field stretcher, the guy that you make the big plays, look in the red zone. And Deebo is that gadget player. Get him an open field, make some big plays after the catch. So it's quite a combination here that the Commanders have assembled at receiver. I think keeping Ertz was pretty key to this offense. On the other side, they kept Bobby Wagner. So they're keeping the guys who are the core veterans to what they're trying to do in Washington. So Ertz, I wasn't sure if they were going to say, okay, just come back. But Ertz did mention how much he enjoyed playing with Daniels in the Commanders offense, kind of rejuvenating from his Eagles days. We know he had a big game in their final game against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. So he was an integral part of what they were doing. Now you got the big three there, and we can have multiple other weapons emerge on this team as well. They also brought back Jeremy Nichols, so they have an option there in the backfield and figuring out with what they're doing with Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler. Eckler should come back healthy as well. Again, I like all the concepts here with the Commanders. And again, Tunsil just really is exciting, again, because he can protect Daniels, who's great at running out of trouble, but he was sacked often, much like Caleb Williams, not quite at that rate, but also could benefit more from pass protection, getting the ball better downfield. So really good Commanders moves so far. They can be afford to be aggressive here, and that's what we're seeing here with their moves. And really, that's the way you should be. I mean, the Broncos have been mildly aggressive with Bo Nix, but not what we'd expect. You see the Texans going the other direction, moving Tunsil for C.J. Stroud. Anthony Richardson's been a disappointment, so now the Colts are bringing in competition with Daniel Jones. But in terms of the second-year younger quarterbacks, you had Stroud and Richardson in year 3, Nix and these two guys going into year 2. There's no doubt that the Bears and Commanders had a direct mission to improve the fortunes and production of their offense with their second-year quarterbacks. And look, Daniels already gave you that high floor, pushing towards the ceiling. So you got to feel really good about him. And I mean, it really made us come down to 3 quarterbacks that you look at ahead of him: Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. And then you get to Jayden Daniels, and you might get the same value in relation to those 3 guys at this rate with Samuel in the mix, and now Tunsil there to help him throw better downfield and execute. And if he's protected well, that means he can also take off well and design runs, have Tunsil pull a little bit, and get some more chunk yardage there. So I think it helps his passing downfield. It helps his running downfield. You got to love it here for Jayden Daniels. So arrow up for Jayden Daniels, arrow up for Caleb Williams. Great to see. These are the type of players we want to see take over the league. And these teams did not let them down so far. Still a lot more to come, which is exciting for sure. And it'll be exciting to see what the Giants and Steelers end up doing at quarterback. We'll be on standby for that here on Locked On Fantasy Football, getting ready to break that down. We want to see what's happening with Rodgers and Wilson. We want it to happen fast, but so far, again, 6 teams are making moves, shaking up the boards here in fantasy football. For this edition of Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. We'll see you next time. Have a good one, and more NFL free agency talk coming your way.